every so often I like to do a state of the show for the Lunduke show, just to keep everyone in the same page of what's happening, how the show's doing, what's going on, what's coming up, what to expect, all that good stuff. We're a kind of a big family here, and you deserve to know everything that's going on. So this is the state of the show for May 16th, 2018, and it's kind of the biggest state of the show I've done so far. To get this out of the way right up front, here's the stats. We have over 48,800 YouTube subscribers now, and it's growing at a crazy pace. I think in May, we gained around 2,000 subscribers. I think we're going to do something that was April, about 2,000. I think we're going to do something similar in May. We have over 740 Patreon supporters now. We've grown by 150 or so just in the last week or two. Things are exploding. It has been an absolute roller coaster ride, and the last 2 months have been by far my busiest, craziest months that I've had in years, in a very good, wonderful, lovely way. And it's also been the fastest growth for this show that I've ever seen. And not just this show, but any show I've ever done. This is the fastest I've ever seen anything like this grow. And that's in large part thanks to all of you. All of you have really helped to spread the word about the show, to pitch in and contribute to the show and really make it what it is. So big, huge, from the bottom of my heart, thanks to all of you for helping to make all of this happen. Now to the meat of this. There's some changes coming up, and I want to give you guys some background of where these changes are coming from and why they're awesome. The first is that over the last few months, really since January, if you've been following the show, you'll notice that I've tried a few different variations on how to schedule the shows, how to schedule the programming, in order to make it not just great for you, but make it something that I just really love. And I love doing this show, but you want to make it even greater, right? So I've been kind of doing a lot of soul searching. I've realized some things about myself, about how I like to do shows, about how I'm best at doing shows, about when I do things, how can I set myself up to do the greatest show I possibly can. And thanks to a lot of you and a lot of special people, let's just call them unnamed special people that work in the industry, I've gotten a lot of advice, and I've learned a ton about what to do and what not to do. And over the last few years, I've done all sorts of things that have been great and smart and brilliant and wise, and at least as many numbers of things that were ridiculously dumb and pointless and wastes of energy. I mean, the amount of mistakes I've made have been off the charts. But I've learned through that process, and I've gotten a lot of feedback and support and help from all of you in that. And because of all that, well, it's time to make some changes. And changes are good. Changes can be good. When you look at any project, and I used to be, a big engineering manager guy, and in that sort of a scenario, when things are clicking along and things are going pretty well, but not everything is perfect, you keep what works and you change what needs changing. And that's what we're going to do right now. Starting tomorrow, we're going to change a few little things up. And here's the goals behind this. There's really two key goals behind these changes. The first is that I am significantly better with a live audience. I've known this for a long time. It's just the way I am. When I get in front of a big live audience, a crowd of people, even if it's not a huge crowd, I do better. I relax. And it may be weird to some people, but I relax in front of an audience and I have more fun, and the shows are more fun and flamboyant. A great example is the Programmers Are Evil video. I had a huge amount of fun with that one. And if you watch it, like the last 20 minutes, in my opinion, were just tons of fun. And it was fun because it was an opportunity for me to interact with the audience, for me to play with everybody and just goof off with fellow nerds, with all of you, and it made it so much fun. It's part of what makes like the Linux Sucks series and everything else so much fun, is that I'm in a room with hundreds and hundreds of crazy Linux nerds like all of us, and we feed off of each other's energy, and we play off of each other, and it just makes it so much fun. I am just a lot better with a live audience. And if you've been following this show, you know that I don't really have a live audience here. In fact, my first studio was a closet. When the Lunduke show started about a year and 3 months ago, year and 4 months, something like that, I was in my bedroom closet. That's where I was. Not exactly enough room for an audience. Hell, there wasn't really enough room for me. So I moved out of that closet, and I came out of the closet and into the garage. And that's where I'm at right now. Now, my garage isn't really a garage. There's no car in my garage. I'm really using it as a makeshift studio space. And it's great because I've got enough space in here to set up shop, to get some lighting equipment in here, to have my gear, to have tables over here of stuff to work on, and 3D printers going and all that sort of thing. And it's fantastic, right? Totally works. However, there's still not exactly room for a studio audience. We can't bring in a crew of people to hang out right here because there's a wall right here. Like literally, I'm reaching my hand towards the camera right now. It's about 2 feet away from a wall. It's right there. There's no room for an audience here. So it's time for a new studio. I've mentioned this a couple of times. I've talked about this briefly here and there, but I've been looking around at how to make this sort of thing happen, how to put together a studio where I can go and have a live studio audience. And I'm really looking at it from the point of view of how do I create a space where nerds like me, like you, Linuxy nerds, computer nerds, retro computer nerds, all of us can get together and have shows and be part of a live audience and have a live event and maybe have a little shindig afterwards, right? How do we do that? How do we make that happen? And I want to do it on the cheap because for a couple of reasons. One, I'm a cheapskate. I do everything on the cheap. It's part of what I love about retro computing is I love getting old gear that perhaps someone has just tossed away and hasn't really given much thought and make it valuable and amazing again. So I've been looking around at warehouse space. I've been looking around at office space. That's kind of like those open floor plan offices, and talking to various people around here to see what would be doable, whether or not things would be allowed to have a live studio audience every week within them and that sort of thing. And the good thing is, I've actually found a couple of very usable locations in the greater Portland, Oregon area. And what's great about that is I am literally, one of the spaces that I'm looking at is literally like 2 blocks from the Intel headquarters. And there are a ton of you over there. Portland is like a hub of free software, open source, and high-tech activity. I know it's not Silicon Valley. It's not even, Seattle, Washington in many respects, but there's a lot of us here with some mega companies that are here. And not just companies, freelance Linux developers and whatnot are filling this area. I mean, Linus himself lives, just a couple miles that way. So that's what we've got around here. So we have a community here. We have the audience available here. And of course, people, as they come through town, can always come in as well. But we've managed to figure out how to do it. I've been looking into it with a few other people of how to do it on the relative cheap in order to make it happen. And the great news is we are well on our way to being able to accomplish that. The Patreon support has shot through the roof. We've got 740 plus Patreon supporters now. And every dollar of that is kind of going towards not just keeping the lights on here and paying my bills, but everything extra, boom, right into the studio, to getting that in place. Not just the studio for like the lease, but the equipment and the utilities that would be needed for all that sort of thing. And I'm working with a couple other companies to offset that cost. So it's not just, me and you as the community paying for it, but of us all coming together and making that happen. So that's number one. That's going to be happening. It's going to take a couple of months to get us there, but we're going to get us there. Now to the bigger thing and the more immediate thing that's going to impact most of you. It is time to change distribution. And I'm not talking about Linux distributions. I do that all the time. I'm talking about we're changing how this show gets distributed. It's time to do it. We have to do it. It just is necessary. And there are reasons for that. One of them is that I do long form shows. I mean, heck, I've been talking for almost 10 minutes right now, and this is just a quick state of the show. I ramble. I talk a lot. It's what I do. I like long form shows. When I have guests on, I like to talk to them for at least a half an hour, because then you get into the good meat of it. I don't like these little interviews where it's just 5 minutes of, let me ask you a question. Okay, that's your answer. We're done. Go. That's not my thing. I want to talk to people. I want to enjoy our experience together. I want you to be able to get to know not just me, but the guests I have on the show. So I do longer form stuff. Like Linux Thursday. Linux Thursday will come out tomorrow. Today's Wednesday. And Linux Thursday will take a boatload of questions, and it's great, because it's an hour long of me and my co-host taking your questions, talking about it, riffing off each other, and having a great time. The problem is those sorts of videos do not lend themselves to going viral. They don't get shared around as much. Things get shared around when they're single topic short clips. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, with Linux Thursday. If I made Linux Thursday into a bunch of separate videos where each video was one question and then we answered it, those videos, honestly, some of them would go crazy viral. I know some of them would. Some of them wouldn't, but some of them would. Much more so than the show. So that's one problem, right? But I'm not going to stop doing long form shows. I love doing long form shows. So how do I solve that problem? The other side of things is the value of content. This is the value of content conundrum. We all have gotten to the point where when we go and look at videos online, we've gotten used to most of it being free. Unfortunately, if I have my videos up on YouTube, the advertisement platform on YouTube sucks. We all know this. We've all seen the adpocalypse stuff, and there's demonetization issues. There's all sorts of problems here, right? It stinks. And on the flip side, is there anything really wrong with paying for things that you enjoy? Paying for great videos, great shows, great books, great video games, whatever, is a really reasonable, normal thing to do. Cable subscriptions, streaming services like Hulu and Netflix and HBO and whatnot, going to the movie theater and buying a ticket to the movie theater. We do this all the time. At least most of us do. Some of you are probably replying right now in the YouTube comments, I don't pay for content ever, but most of us do. And it's very, very normal. And the fact that we've kind of come to a point where many of our YouTube content creators, we expect that it's always free, I think is problematic. I think that's really problematic. And so we're doing a change. We're doing a big change, and we're doing a change starting tomorrow. Starting tomorrow, Thursday, May 17th, with Linux Thursday, the long-form shows I produce will no longer be available in their entirety for free on YouTube. They just won't. They will only be available to supporters of mine on Patreon. More on that part of it momentarily. But then what's going to happen is I'm going to take highlight clips. So, for instance, in the Linux Thursday show, if there's a couple of particularly entertaining, interesting, funny, insightful, valuable questions, I'm going to clip those out, and I'm going to release those individual clips for free on YouTube. This does a whole bunch of good stuff. For many of you, those clips will be fine. Those clips, those highlight clips of the shows that I produce will be plenty. That'll give you your Lunduke fix. That'll let you get the things that you tune into the long form shows for in the first place. And that's great. That's totally great. For the rest of you that want the long form shows, that want the whole hour-long Linux Thursday, that want the big long rants that I do, and along with some other stuff, I'm going to be bringing back some other scheduled content as well. You go to a pay-what-you-want system for the entire month, basically like a subscription service to Hulu or to Netflix or what have you, except instead of paying a preset, $11, whatever, you pay whatever you want, and you get access to all of the current shows and all the back catalog and everything else. That's how it's going to go. This not only gives a much higher chance for all of those individual clips to go viral, which helps basically as advertising for the show, but it also helps give more exposure to the various topics. So like if I'm asking a question about, or if someone asks a question on Linux Thursday about a Linux related topic, that gets out there and gets spread out far more widely than it ever possibly could have, just simply contained within the standalone hour-long Linux Thursday show. So it really helps the community as well. I mean, it's just kind of a win-win for everyone. In fact, it even is a win for the sponsors of this show, because in the end, their little advertising logos and whatnot will be in those little clips, which means in the long run, they're actually going to get more views this way than they would under the current system. So it's kind of just a win-win for absolutely, well, mostly everybody. However, some people are going to get grumpy. I know that. This is one, it's a change, and change makes people grumpy. I get it, man. I totally get it. And I feel for those people that this makes grumpy, and I will do everything I can to help make it so you're not grumpy about it, and so that it works for you and for the way you like to watch the shows. There's undoubtedly going to be growing pains with it, but it's going to make a few of you grumpy. I know that, and that's okay. So I wanted to take a moment to address some of the things I think people are going to be grumpy about here. The first, undoubtedly, some people are going to complain because content should be free. I'm going to hear stuff like this a lot. I have no doubt about it. In my opinion, if I enjoy something, it's worth paying for. It just is. And because YouTube ads are so unreliable, it doesn't really make sense to keep going down this road for many reasons. I'm too dependent on being on YouTube, and this helps to decouple myself from YouTube. So, but content being free though, if you say that, make sure that you do not pay for HBO, Netflix, Hulu, a cable or satellite subscription service, Amazon Prime, or any other service. Otherwise, you're not being honest with yourself. We all, at least most of us, pay for these sorts of things. And maybe what I produce here isn't something that's worth for you to pay for. Maybe it is. I think for a lot of you it is, and for some of you, just getting the free clips will be plenty. And I really am cool with that. I think that's totally, totally fine. And good entertainment has a real value here. Now, if you think about this in terms of, dollars spent per hour of entertainment, I produce roughly 16 plus shows every month, right? And that's on a short month. On a like a 28-day month, I'll produce roughly 4-ish videos per week, sometimes a little bit more. So 16 plus, I think last month it was 18, something like that. If you come in and subscribe at Patreon for $2 a month, then we're talking about 12 cents per show. 12 pennies. Give or take a half a penny, a pence, a shilling, a tuppence, if you will. But about 12 cents per show. Now, if you're watching a show, a video, 45-minute, half-hour, hour-long video, and you spend an hour watching it, but you feel to yourself, man, this is not worth 12 cents, but I'm going to spend an hour of my life watching it, that means that your time is not worth 12 cents. That means that you are not worth 12 cents an hour. That's ridiculous. So you know what I'm saying, guys. So if you want to pitch in, if you'd like the long form shows, you head on over to Patreon and you get it that way. I think it's a very reasonable thing to ask. Of course, people can pitch in more than $2 a month if they want to help the show out or get some of the perks at the higher level tiers and whatnot. But everyone who pitches in at Patreon gets all the shows, period. End of story. You get them all, whether you're pitching in at $2 or $1 billion. No one's pitching in at $1 billion yet. We'll see if we can change that. I'm looking at you, Bezos. Also, some people are undoubtedly going to be like, hey, what about freedom, man, with a capital F? I love freedom. And people are going to ask, isn't this contrary to freedom, like GPL and the ideals of Creative Commons and the Free Software Foundation and Richard Stallman? And the answer is no, not even a little. If you truly think that, then you have probably no idea what Richard Stallman and the Free Software Foundation stand for. The fact is, most diehard free software advocates, which include both myself as well as Richard Stallman and many others, agree vehemently that paying for things that you enjoy or use is a good thing. That is just the way it is. But when we're talking about licensing of software and the like, well, that's an entirely different issue. But licensing that's in use is not related to whether or not you charge for the goods, for the book, for the video game, for the operating system. The Free Software Foundation, in fact, encourages people to charge money for things. And so I'm following what Richard Stallman says, and I'm charging now. I'm basically creating my own cable network, sort of. It's like an on-demand only cable service. I'm creating a streaming service, my own streaming service. That's just me, and me and my friends, basically. Now, what this also allows me to do on the free software front is it decouples myself much more from YouTube. And YouTube is problematic in many regards. It's not free software. That's a problem. I mean, it's something we deal with because we use it for a distribution mechanism, and we use it for discovery of all this great content that helps free software. So it's a real moral conundrum there. But by decoupling myself from it, it allows me to utilize other services much more easily. And it makes it much easier for me to migrate to something else. Now, as those services, as free software and open source based video sharing services become much more viable, and some of them are becoming increasingly viable lately, it allows me to jump over to them, either both in addition to YouTube or just get rid of YouTube and just jump over to the other ones just entirely. This allows me a lot more freedom. Now, this does put me over on Patreon, which Patreon is also not free software. However, Patreon is a functional service right now, and there's not really a great free software alternative to that yet. Maybe someday there will be. Maybe I'll be able to pitch in to help with getting that closer. But for the time being, Patreon's a good solution for that. So this does help the overall free software goals that I have. Also, people might just not want to use Patreon, or for whatever reason, perhaps the country they exist in, they can't use Patreon. And I totally get that. That is a really reasonable complaint. I'm currently looking into some other possible solutions to this. I don't have anything lined up yet because there's nothing else that I'm truly satisfied with. However, I will say this. Right now, Patreon is working. Patreon as a service is accomplishing the goals that I have. So I'm going to stick with Patreon for the time being. This is right now is the way forward for subscribing to whatever you want to call this, the Lunduke network, the Lunduke streaming service. It doesn't really even matter. But to get my long form shows, you gotta be on Patreon. And realistically, that seems to be something that most of you that want to contribute are somewhat comfortable with, or at least okay with. And so that's about as good as we're going to get with any service at the moment. We will be keeping our ear out. Myself, everyone who kind of is involved with the show in various ways, and all of you, as we figure out better solutions for video hosting, for subscription services and the like, we'll absolutely implement those things, because that's the goal, right? We want to do the best. But for now, it's on Patreon. That's just the way it's going to go. And again, every supporter on Patreon, every single one, $2 or $1 billion, really should be more $1 billion supporters, at every level gets all the shows. This isn't about gouging anyone. This is simply about getting rid of creating a replacement for the YouTube ad revenue. So I'm not reliant on YouTube ad revenue anymore, and I'm more simply reliant on you, because the more reliant on all of you I am, the more freedom I have to do whatever I want, to say whatever I want, to be on whatever platform I want. This is a big, big benefit. And everyone else, everyone who doesn't pitch in still gets the highlight clips. And those highlight clips, I plan to do multiple per show, depending on when it makes sense. Like the Linux Thursday show, it's really easy to chop that up into a couple of 3 to 6 minute clips here and there. People won't get all of the show that way, but they'll get little chunks of the show, so they can still enjoy me and Matt Hartley having witty banter about which Babylon 5 ship runs Linux, etc. And they'll get all that for free still. And that'll help to spread word about the show. And this is where you do it. You go to patreon.com/Brian Lunduke. There's also a link over on lunduke.com where you can get all of that good stuff. And I want to take a moment to definitely thank the sponsors who have been with me. Pogo Linux has been with me since almost the beginning, and they have really made a lot of this possible. I literally could not be here without my Patreon supporters and without companies like Pogo Linux. I just absolutely couldn't. And also to Lulzbot, who's been with me now for, oh gosh, well over half a year. They're absolutely amazing. They make good products. They love free software, and they've been supporting what I do. I mean, they're just crazy cool people. And the fact that they've got me in their phone tree system. I am inside their company. I am invading their phone systems. How cool is that? It's just absolutely awesome. And the most recent sponsor, I used one of my old slides here. So the Purism, normally I have it switched, so it's white on gray. It's black on gray there, which makes it look very mysterious. But Purism also big supporters of free software, big supporter of people's rights. They make great laptops, and they're working on a really cool phone with kill switches and free software galore. You just can't go wrong with that. I love the fact that I've been able to build this little world where I'm sponsored by companies like this that are just small to medium sized. Well, I guess Lulzbot's getting actually fairly big, but growing companies that are supporting free software, supporting the ideals that I support, and they're helping make all this happen. So I couldn't thank them enough. All right. So again, go to lunduke.com or patreon.com/Brian Lunduke to see how to subscribe over there. When I do the show tomorrow, when I do tomorrow's episode of Linux Thursday, if you want the whole show, you've got to be a Patreon supporter. I know some of you are going to complain about this. I know. I was just talking with Matt Hartley, my co-host on Linux Thursday, about this, and he's like, yeah, I think we're on board. It's the right thing to do, but a couple people are going to be complaining loudly, and that's okay. That's okay. Not every change can be for everyone, but I think in the end, this is going to be a net win for me. This is going to be a net win for most of you, and a net win for the sponsors of the show as well. And I think it'll just help grow the show. So anyway, that's where we're at. That's what's happening. That's the state of the show for May 16th. We're bigger than we've ever been. We're growing faster than we ever have. Oh, and a very tiny tidbit. We're doing a couple of little visual refreshes of the show. You'll notice this looks a little different in layout than things have looked in the past. I kind of like it a little bit more, as well as I'm adding in some credits. So there's actual animated credits coming that include shout outs to some of the upper level Patreon supporters and all that sort of good stuff. And new updates to the look and feel of the Linux Thursday show, as well as some of the shows that will be coming back next week that I've dabbled with in the past that have had mixed results out there in the past, but I think under this new model of having little clips released, I think some of them are going to do much, much better. All right, guys, that's it. Thank you to everyone again. I love each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart, and I'll see you tomorrow.